Hey guys, God bless you. This is Carlos, and you are tuned into Bible Wise Money. And in this episode and in the following two episodes, I'm going to go over the one principle that you need to recognize and you're going to absolutely have to perfect and overcome if you want to reach any of your goals. Come inside the video and I'll tell you all about it. Let me share the scripture from Proverbs 21. This is going to be our guiding principle for this lesson. Biblical principle from Proverbs 21, verse number 20. It says, "The wise have wealth and luxury, but fools spend whatever they get." Get that last part. You're a fool if you spend whatever you get. There's things that you and I are supposed to do with the resources that God brings to us besides just spending. You know, over the last couple of videos, we've been showing you some of the ins and outs of e-commerce, and today I want to take a little bit of a sidestep from that, and I want to talk a little bit more about some of the principles that really go behind good financial management. And if you've been tuning in on a regular basis, one of the quotes that I love from Dave Ramsey is that personal finance is 80% behavior. But I think practically it's okay for you to ask, and you should ask, what does that really mean? What are some of these behaviors that we really need to pay attention to if we want to be successful in handling our personal finances, our business finances, or any level at all that requires our finances? And what I want to talk to you about in this episode and in the next two is this issue of consumerism. So one of the examples that I like to use is from the movie The Matrix. And if you've ever seen The Matrix, you know that there are these two central figures. There's Morpheus, who's kind of like this prophet character, and then there's Neo, who's sort of this savior type character. There's this one scene that I particularly enjoy. Morpheus is having almost like an interview, a conversation with the character Neo, and he holds before him two pills. In one hand, there's a blue pill, and in the other hand, there's a red pill. And he wants to explain certain things to Neo, but he needs to make sure that Neo's really ready to hear him. So he says, if you take the blue pill, you'll basically, everything will go back to normal. You'll wake up and you could believe whatever it is you want to believe. He said, however, if you take the red pill, he says, I'm going to show you how deep this rabbit hole really goes. So he's saying this thing is really deep. And if you really want to understand it, Neo, take the red pill, and I'm going to show you some things that you have not seen before, and I'm going to explain some things to you that you have never heard before. So I almost, in a sense, am offering that same opportunity to each of you now. I have every confidence that you'll continue to tune in on the video and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Before I go any further, I would like to invite you, if you're getting anything out of this content, if you can hit the like button below, it would help us out so greatly. What the movie really highlights is that there are things that are happening all around us, you and I, all the time, every day, and we're not really seeing them for what they are. I'm talking about consumerism now. So let me just talk to you a little bit for just a moment about the history of consumerism. So about 100 years ago, more or less, I think we may have heard of a fellow named Sigmund Freud. He was a famous neurologist, and he was also a psychologist, a psychotherapist, and he did a lot of studies into the human mind, basically trying to figure out human behaviors and why people did what they did. And he had a lot of theories. I don't necessarily agree with all his theories, but he really had some theories that made a lot of sense. And one of the things that one of the conclusions that Freud came to is that we each have some unconscious desires that drive our behaviors. So some of the things we do, there's actually a reason for things that we do. His nephew, a fellow named Edward Bernays, was obviously very aware of his uncle's teaching, and this goes back again to the 1920s. And he took his uncle's his teachings a little bit further. And when he started to think about why we do what we do, he actually came up with some ideas that were called, for him, he had named them the pleasure principle. So, yeah, that was not Janet Jackson who came up with the pleasure principle first. It was Edward Bernays. And what he was saying is a lot of what drives our behaviors is a subconscious desire for things like pleasure. And so he was the first one who said, let me use some of my uncle's teachings about the human psychology, why we do what we do, and let me see if I can apply it now to consumer behavior. Let me see if I can actually change the way people behave towards products and how people spend their money. That was his thesis, and that's what he set out to do. He's known as the man who manipulated America. And so from that time until the time that he did his work, up until now, people like him and others have taken his work and perfected it. And today it impacts you and I, and it impacts our finances in a great way. Let me give you a couple of examples. He was one of the ones who worked with the first auto companies to change how they targeted their cars towards consumers. So initially, when automakers want to sell their cars, they would highlight things like this car gets more mileage for every gallon of gas. This car goes faster than the other car. This car has a smoother ride than another car. So they were only advertising features of the car. And he came along and said something different. He said the way to market a car is to say, what need does this car fill? So it may be a need for status, it may be a need for power, it may be a need for independence. He said that's what you have to sell. Those are the selling points to sell a car. And when he tried out his techniques through advertising and trying to influence the way people thought and felt, guess what? It worked. People bought more of the cars where he was hired because of the techniques that he used. And that wasn't the only way he did it. He'd be one of the ones who would try to link, let's say, the sale of a car with a pretty woman. So you probably have all seen, and even to this very day, it's not unusual when you see advertising for vehicles, or if you ever go to the car show, like I did once, who's typically selling the car? Who is actually pointing out the features of the car? But it's usually a woman. It's usually a woman who's very attractive. And so he was the one who would have a woman draped over the hood of a car. Now, having a woman draped over the car has nothing to do with the car, or how the car works, or how functional the car is, or how well it will drive, but that was one of his selling points. Obviously, a woman draped over your car has got nothing to do with the vehicle, but guess what? It worked. He was one of the individuals who actually, in the 1920s, he actually worked with a cigarette company that made a cigarette called Lucky Strikes. And Lucky Strikes was trying to figure out how to sell more cigarettes to women. Because back then, it was only thought that really men smoke cigarettes, especially outdoors. Like that was a man thing. If you were a woman who smoked cigarettes, you did it indoors. It was not seen as ladylike. So he tapped into this subconscious desire that he said women have to be more equal, to be more independent, to be more powerful, to be just as good as men are. And so by using simple techniques, he actually, at a parade, an annual Easter parade in 1929, he staged it so there were certain women who were actually part of the parade, who were smoking Lucky Strike cigarettes outdoors, and he featured them, and he had photographers come and take pictures of them. And sure enough, part of that campaign worked. As a matter of fact, he went a step further with his campaign. There was actually a portion of campaign where he had doctors saying, the next time you want to reach for a sweet like a candy, don't do that. Instead, reach for a cigarette. And he was appealing to a woman's sense that sweets will make you heavy, so grab a cigarette and stay slim. So he was hitting women low. And guess what? It worked. And now, almost 100 years later, you and I are bombarded every day, it is said, with 10,000 advertising messages per day to get us to spend money the way advertisers want us to spend our money. So this is really like matrix stuff. This is like stuff that is unseen until someone points it out to you and then you see it. And one of the wonderful things that I found is once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Now, every time you see an advertisement, you're going to say, that person is trying to sell me something. Now, every time you see someone, a slick salesman in a dealership, you'll say, wait a second. The first thing they do is they compliment you, or they try to make small talk. They're trying to become friendly with you. They want you to think, hey, I'm your friend. You can trust me. And therefore, now I can sell you a $50,000 car, or I can upsell you and get you to add some other feature, whatever it might be. This is classic 101 advertising and salesmanship. When my oldest son, got his first job, I had to sit him down, and one of the conversations I had, a dad to son conversation, I said, Glenn, this is one thing I really want you to know. There are people who are out there, and their sole job in life, their mission in life is to separate you from your money. That's how they make their money. That's how they pay their rent. That's how they buy their cars. That's how they pay for their mortgages, is figuring out new ways to separate you from your money. And I said, don't fall for it. I said, I want you to see it when it happens. And it's going to be in a million different ways, whether that's an offer for a credit card or whether it's debt financing, whatever it might be. There's a million ways that there are a lot of really, really smart people who work in every industry that's out there, and their job is to separate you from your money. And part of the challenge and one of the purposes of this channel is to help you really build your financial influence, build your financial capacity, build your ability to reach your goals, as I've said before, to increase your standard of living and to increase your standard of giving. And nothing will take it off track faster than consumerism. Either you will tame consumerism, or every time consumerism will stop you in your tracks. You will not reach your financial goals personally. You will not be able to manage the growth in your church finances. You will be unsuccessful in your business ventures. You will just not be able to grow past a certain point if you don't understand these lessons on consumerism. I've got a lot more to say. Matter of fact, in the next episode, I'm actually going to show, and I'm going to give you real world examples about you and I, not 100 years ago. I'm not talking about Lucky Strike cigarettes. I'm not talking about the woman draped over the hood of a car. Real world examples of how you and I today in 2021 are being successfully sold on consumerism, and our money is going right out the door. And it becomes that much more difficult for you and I to reach our financial goals. I hope you got something out of this. Tune in for the next episode where I'm going to go even deeper into this issue of consumerism. I got 2 more episodes coming up just on consumerism. And then after that, we're going to go into the biggest topic I think that most of us really have to struggle with day to day, which is this issue of debt. God bless you. See you inside the next video. Alicia, what do you think about the movie The Matrix?
I don't like it.
Okay, there it is. Alicia does not like The Matrix.